Hello, everybody. I'm back, and my name is Phúc, and I want to uh, announce that it's finally time for my last video of character analysis about the anime Code Geass, and this is also the last part of my analysis of the character Suzaku. I'm very proud that I've been able to reach the final part of my analysis about this anime, and I hope that we will enjoy this last video all together. So now I would like to share my screen. Okay, so last time I managed to end my sharing at the Zero Requiem event, right? So now I would like to start from there. So after Suzaku, Cece, and Lelouch managed to defeat King Charles, Lelouch and Suzaku came back to claim the throne, right? So, uh, and they kind of had a very big plan going on. It is Zero Requiem. So, according to what I have watched, it seems that Zero came back to claim the throne, and he kind of wanted to establish a dictatorship with Britannia holding all the power in its hand with the great and deadly weapon like the atomic bomb, it is very easy for Britannia to seize all the power into the country, right? And Lelouch kind of even wanted to establish like a dictatorship in order to kind of like make all the hatred kind of focus on himself. And and later on, Suzaku would be the one to kill Lelouch in order to kind of like defeating a common enemy, and then the whole world will unite because of that. And after agreeing on the Zero Requiem, he finally put all his might into fighting for that result, for that ideal, right? So Suzaku now he already has like a solid ideology, a completely new one that focus on the result. He shifted from focusing on using the right methods to only achieving the result, and that is to assist Lelouch to create a new world. And in order to do that, Suzaku will be riding in the landslord and will fight against anyone who stands in the plan of Zero Requiem. For example, uh, the remain the remains of the King Charles army are the knights. So the some of the knights around they still follow King Charles' order. They're still loyal to King Charles, and they objected that Lelouch became the new king, and of course they used their army to attack Lelouch, but Suzaku managed to defeat all of them. He even defeated the Knight of One, who possessed the gift of seeing the future, and Suzaku also became more ruthless than before, so he just killed without mercy. Obviously, no holding back anymore. I think it's probably because he finally realized what his dream, what his goal really is now. And he admitted to play the role of Lelouch, the role of Lelouch's sword that would get rid of all the enemies and weaknesses that stood in the way of Zero Requiem. So what does it mean, right? So get rid of all the enemies, sure, get rid of King Charles and even Snizel's army and also the Black Knight. So so lots of people, most of the existing armies fight against Lelouch, right? So Suzaku will fight as Lelouch's sword to protect the Zero Requiem. But what about getting rid of the weakness? What does it mean to get rid of the weakness? It means that actually uh, Snizel managed to keep Nunnally alive. So remember after the fight at the Tokyo settlement, right? When Suzaku dropped the atomic bomb, Lelouch thought that Nunnally already died because of the bomb, but that's not really the case. The truth was that Snizel managed to keep Nunnally safe in order to hold Lelouch down. Like if Nunnally is alive, Lelouch cannot go full power, right? And and Lelouch, I think he got affected a little bit when he saw Nunnally. And obviously Nunnally is with Schneisel, and she decided to fight against Lelouch, and she already knew that Lelouch is Zero, and she thinks that Zero using the Geass power is not appropriate. It is immoral, and Suzaku, he made sure that Lelouch would not his spirit would not falter even if Nunnally is alive. So you can't stop this just because Nunnally is still alive, right? So we have sacrificed so many people already, and even more bloodshed will happen just for the Zero Requiem to succeed. So there's no way we're going back just because your sister is still alive, right? Uh, I'm his sword. I rid him of his enemies and his own weaknesses. And obviously, Lelouch has the same thought. He also agrees that he will not stop the Zero Requiem just because of Nunnally or anybody specifically, because he already realized that so many people have to die already in order to achieve that sustainable peace. And and after that, during the fight between the Snizel army, the Black Knights, against Lelouch army, uh, Suzaku engaged in a fight with Karen. So they kind of spoke to each other. It's kind of funny because basically when Karen and Suzaku fought, they always talk to each other, even it's during the battle. And Suzaku stated that people wanted to choose how to live differently, that justice also had different meaning. Uh, so he said that people I think we should look at the quote, people, the world, despite it all, they won't be what we want them to be. So basically, I think it's just as the sentence shows is that people they always have their own kind of ideologies, right? For example, for King Charles, his ideology is to have this the strong oppress the weak, and there's no equality, and he wants to merge the living world and the world of the death together. This is what he believed in. And the Britannian people also follow King Charles. So they are one side of the opinion, right? And the other side of the opinion will be the Japanese and the resistance. They want to obtain liberty. They don't want to be treated as the weak, and they have to suffer the outcome of inequality and discrimination. So they also have their own ideology. And it's very hard to live in a world without humans pushing ideologies onto each other, right? Because if we just blindly listen to somebody else, then we will have no voice. We don't have our own opinion. So uh, it's But in the world of Code Geass, for example, Britannia, it's kind of like an extreme case. So like the weak, the people who got colonized, they don't have any voices. They lose their most of the human rights are taken away from them. And the King Charles ideology is also kind of like twisted and extreme. And that is like an extreme case that we're talking about here. So that's the reason why, because it is an extreme case, war and fights broke out because it's cannot be helped anymore, right? It's already at like the extreme level. And basically wars will happen in order to kind of like obtain a more balanced state. And so that's why Suzaku said that people wanted to choose how to live differently, that justice also had different meaning, right? So for Suzaku and Lelouch, for example, Lelouch, he wanted to destroy Britannia in order to create a peaceful world, right? That is what Lelouch chose. For Suzaku, he already had a trauma, right, by killing his father to obtain peace. But but in the end, war still broke out, right? Britannia still waged war with other countries, and the colonies still fought against Britannians. So obviously, the wars didn't stop. That's the reason why Suzaku he thinks that killing on impulse by personal emotion is not the right thing to do, right? He wants to follow something more systematic, and he just happened to choose Britannian army and trying to change the Britannian system from the inside. And that is also Suzaku's way of living, right? And even though Suzaku and Lelouch they have different way to live, they still wanted peace. And and many people and that is what I want to demonstrate for Suzaku's opinion about people wanted to choose how to live differently. And justice also means differently according to the context, right? And however, many people were against the idea of the lack of freedom and ease. So there's something similar. So many people have different ideas of justice. And however, most people they are against the geese power. So the geese here is I think geese is what creates inequality as well. And most of the people don't like being under the geese spell. And they also want freedom. So that is the main idea here, is that even though people have different kind of idea of justice, they still want something like freedom. So that is the biggest common uh, about most humans. And I think this is I'm just going to analyze this based on what I understand from Karen's and Suzaku's conversation, which I think actually makes a lot of sense. Um, in the end, Suzaku finally accepted Lelouch's wish for him to live on as Zero and fight for justice. So you know, at the end, right? Suzaku he killed Lelouch and he accepted Lelouch's punishment to live on. The reason why I said it punishment because Suzaku actually wanted to die, but because of Lelouch gaze on him, it kind of, it kind of makes him unable to die, and it kind of makes Suzaku very angry, and he resented Lelouch for that. But finally, in the end of the anime, Suzaku came to terms and he accepted Lelouch Geese to live on and live and also live at zero. Live at zero here means that he cannot reveal to others that he is Suzaku, and he has to wear a mask whenever he's in public, and be he will always be a knight of justice, just like what he wants in the first place. So I think I think that makes total sense right here. It's a perfect uh wrap in the end, right? For Suzaku to finally become a knight of justice. And he accepts to live on and free from the curse that he has been holding for probably a very long time, like years. And he finally understands what it means to obtain and protect the peace. So I think I have pictures. So this is actually Suzaku right there. Although he dressed like Zero, this is Suzaku, and this is when after he stabbed Zero, sorry, after he stabbed Lelouch, and yeah. So this is when Suzaku he told Lelouch that even though Nunali is still alive, you have to carry out the Zero Requiem until the end. Yeah. So now I would like to do a little sum up. So the summary of Suzaku. So in summary, Suzaku's growth could be seen throughout the series. He started as a normal soldier of the Britannia army who had contradicting ideals stemming from his action of killing his own father in order to prevent war from happening. Um, However, this is very contradicting, right? Because even the Britannian army waged war to expand its territory. Another problem in his mindset was that he actually wanted to sacrifice himself to for the sake of others to atone for his father's death as a form of punishment, right? But Suzaku he wanted to change the Britannian system from the inside. But if he just wanted to sacrifice himself, just obey orders blindly, then the system cannot be changed, and he might just end up dying before any change happens at all. So thinking of killing his father to stop war was the wrong method of achieving the outcome. Suzaku thought that the means was more important and he needed others' acceptance in order to obtain his goal, right? So after killing his father, Suzaku felt very guilty and he thinks that he cannot just act on his own anymore, but he needs other people's opinion. We need others' acceptance in order to change the Britannian system. This is actually something that is very, I think it's very correct. It's the right thing to do, right? We also need other people's opinion to change in order to instead of just pushing the change down onto them. Okay. During his engagement in battle against the Black Knights, like in season one, right? Suzaku he held back a lot during his fight. Even if it's the fight between him and Zero, he still held back a lot, probably because Zero saved his life once. And during that time, Zero was still didn't kill too many people. And he even stated that the Black Knight will defend the weak, right? But that changed completely during the second season. Um, and just like my summary for season one, Suzaku he got influenced by Euphemia, who wanted to create a world where people could live happily, right? So because of this influence, he decided to use persuasion instead of violence to interact with Karen, who is the member of the Black Knight. But he also helped Zero defeat the Japanese army powered by the Chinese Federation. It kind of shows that he shifted, right? He has a shift in his principle of only obeying orders. And whenever you see the Black Knights, you have to destroy them or something. But because of Euphemia, Suzaku also softened a lot. But unfortunately, Euphemia ended up dying, and because of that, Suzaku also had a great change in his attitude. So he wasn't in the Black Rebellion at the end of season one. So it's the fight between Cornelia's army and the Black Knights. So Suzaku he hated Zero for killing Euphemia, and even though he doesn't receive any order to go after Zero, he decided to go on his own. And obviously he did that while disobeying the orders, right? And he did that completely on his own will, by his own will. And he also wanted to kill Zero, uh, which only focus on the results and doesn't really care about the methods, right? So Suzaku even stated that I always think that killing without using any principle would just be murder, right? But now I am engulfed by hatred, and I just want to come and kill you, kind of like that. That was like a brief summary of a quote at the Black Rebellion event. And yeah, so basically Suzaku shifted completely from using the right methods to achieving results, which is to kill Zero. But um this was fighting to kill for his own desire was against his principle due to an outburst of emotion, which is hatred instead of rational decision. So there is a change in Suzuku, completely the opposite of who he used to be, but this is more like a negative change, and it is due to an outburst of emotion rather than rational decision, right? So so later on in the second part of the anime, he changed into someone who prioritized results over means, like using Lelouch to become Knight of One, uh, to become Knight of One, right? Or overthrowing King Charles and collaborating with Lelouch to obtain peace. So obviously in season two, it's kind of obvious to see that Suzaku he became more manipulative and calculating as well, right? Like when he called Nunali and uh and let her talk to Lelouch in order to test if Lelouch already regained his memory or not, or use the luge as a bargaining chip to get a promotion, right? So obviously Suzaku also, change change into the dark side a lot. However, thanks to the geese that Lelouch cast on him, which is for him to live on, Suzaku started to see the bigger picture of the damages from war. And the fact that Britannia also prioritized results, uh, how Britannia also prioritized results over honorable using honorable means. So basically, I think Suzaku started to see King Charles. He also stained his hand with geese and abandoning his responsibility as a king, right? And uh many other negative sides of the Britannian system. That's the reason why he decided to shift uh from obeying King Charles to assisting Lelouch. And And as I have said before, the geese that Lelouch cast onto Suzaku would be the first step for Suzaku to see the bigger picture, right? And to change as well. So during the process, Suzaku slowly changed his hatred towards Zero into protecting the peace that Euphemia and Nunnally aim for, which also meant defying some orders and ideals of Britannia as well. So, for example, he during the event of Zero leaving Area 11, Suzaku, I think if it is under Britannian's uh, ideology, it is best to show off their power and then destroy, maybe kill all of the people, all of the 1 million people and the Black Knights and Zero in order to eliminate all the resistance. But but Suzaku, he decided to let them go, right? And that is obviously defying the true nature of Britannian already. So many changes happened, and also Nunnally, right? Nunnally, she became the viceroy of Area 11, but she is someone who is a pacifier, and that also partly changes the Britannian system slowly as well. And also, Suzaku kind of guessed that Zero is Lelouch, right? But he decided not to tell King Charles because he was afraid that the king will use Nunnally to hold down Lelouch, right? So obviously, Suzaku, he did change for the worse when he became the Knight of Round in the second season, but he managed to keep his own principles, right? For example, he was tired of lying to Nunnally, and he didn't use the refrain to interrogate Karen, right? So that was Suzuki's struggle when he got deeper involved in with the Britannian system. So finally, after the event of Suzuki dropping the atomic bomb into the onto the Tokyo settlement, right? He finally realized that even after he killed his father to stop war between Britannia and Japan, that still happened because Japanese wanted independence. When he joined the Britannian military with intention to stop war, that still happened. Yeah, so the cycle of bloodshed and hatred cannot, it did not stop. So he came to understand that peace could not be achieved by only honorable means, and death could not be avoided during the process. So it is war, right? Unless it is a cold war, then I believe there might be no bloodshed. But in this case, in this universe, right, the Code Geass universe, there is bloodshed, and And in order to achieve the sustainable peace, even more bloodshed will have to happen. Hence, along with Lelouch, Suzaku also killed those who hindered the Zero Requiem in order to achieve peace, right? So death could not be avoided. But after a very huge amount of people dying and bloodshed, then a sustainable peace could be attained. And in the end, Suzaku accepted the punishment of living on and protecting justice as the new Zero. So as you can see, Suzaku, right? He changed from being someone who doesn't know what he wants to do. He wants to obtain peace, but he's still a very lost teenager, and he struggles to find the right direction. Even though he joins the Britannian military, he still managed to aim for a peaceful world, to help other people, even to sacrifice himself for the benefits of other people, right? He's still a nice person. But the problem here is that being a nice person only doesn't really solve or change the system, the Britannian system for the better. And in order to actually make changes, first you need to stay alive first, right? That's the reason why the Geass spell was the first step for Suzaku to actually make changes. The second part is that Suzaku he himself alone cannot change the Britannian system because he doesn't understand what is the real nature of King Charles, right? He doesn't know that King Charles has Geass power until season 2, right? So that's why it would be best if Lelouch and Suzaku works together. And that's when I will move on to the comparison between Lelouch and Suzaku, right? So before that, I would like to go through the overview of the context between these two characters. So the story was addressing the dilemma of politics. Whether it's the right thing to use Geass power to make things easier to achieve the results, or to fight fair and square while gaining support from other people. Well, in the beginning, it's the matter of inequality and strong discrimination that left a deep scar in society. For Lelouch himself, he already hated the system for a long time and thought that it should be destroyed in order for a better system to be built. However, the use of Geass had resulted in a great price, as he could have reduced more deaths, but instead sacrificed more people in the process because his Geass turned uncontrollable. So, as I did mention it in the season 1, in my discussion of the Geass power. So the Geass power, if it is used in an effective way, maybe we can minimize death. But basically, I think in the Code Geass context, Lelouch decided to walk the path of destruction, right? That's the reason why his case was viewed to be very negative and very scary. But and yeah, and instead of using the Geass to reduce deaths, it sacrificed even more people. For example, uh, Lelouch, he when he got stronger and have a stronger army of Black Knights, he kind of he even used some of the members of the Black Knights to wipe out the entire underground city. In that city, there are experiments on the Geass power. So Vivi was the one who built that city in order to test the Geass power on children. I'm not sure if there are adults who got tested, but No, most of the test subjects are children, I suppose. And yeah, and after because Rollo killed Shirley, so uh Lelouch thought that geese are very dangerous and it should not exist. And maybe because if the geese power exists, then more people like Shirley will have to die, right? That's the reason why Lelouch decided to wipe out the entire city. But I think that there should be better ways to do that instead of, just killing everybody. And and that's the reason, and I think that is also probably unavoidable because for somebody who first experience the power of geese, right? It is very hard to control it because the geese will later become uncontrollable, right? And if you're not strong enough, then the geese power will take over you. And just like any ordinary people, Lelouch also got, maybe he also got greatly affected by the negativity of uh, bloodshed, of war, and also of the gays' power as well. So it is to be understood, but the result is that he still killed a lot of people. Furthermore, using geese also took away humans' right to make decisions, and this might result in further resistance to his ideal. And the power itself was also supreme, and Lelouch didn't know how to train his members, like the Black Knights, to take charge when he's absent. Therefore, um, the Black Knights would be heavily dependent on Lelouch, and the world would be pretty fragile without him, right? And for Suzaku, there were possibilities that he could change Britannia from the inside. Like, um, I think without the geese power, then that might be the most possible ways to change the system. However, the process might take very long if we take the context into account. Like, for example, King Charles, he's obviously not very fond of equality, and he has the geese power to control people, right? So, going against someone like that, it might be impossible for Suzaku to do anything. And he ended up basically Suzaku, he has the tendency of sacrificing himself. So, and also obeying orders. So it's very hard for him to actually make any change to the Britannian system. So, in summary, it came down to the question of results or methods. And the answer might lie in the combination of both. Like if you're too nice and you only play by the rules that would never let you win, then you cannot win, right? And if if you only abuse power, for example, you have keys and you abuse it too much, then people who don't have the keys will be heavily relied on you. And it also might be something negative, like even like Lelouch used keys to control the people as well. So that might create a more moral dilemma. And if Lelouch thinks that only the destruction of the old system would solve the problem, then he's also using violence against violence. And then the hatred and the doubts will plague his new world. So Lelouch he wants to win the battle in order to stop the war, right? But what does it mean to win a battle? If you win the battle, then definitely there will be people who lost the battle. And obviously the people who lost, they won't be very happy about it, right? And maybe so there will possibly be peace, but that peace will be at the cost of the lives of those who lost the battle. So that's also not probably the most ideal way. And if the two could sit down and listen to others' opinions, then maybe both of them could come up with better solutions. So that would be the ideal situation, right? But however, the story wasn't that simple. Since Lelouch and Suzaku grew up to be different people, their ways of life diverged greatly and only converge at the end of the series, where both realized the flaws in their ideologies and finally collaborated. So it's kind of like that. I kind of think that it's a lot like a human's life as well, a lifespan. So at first we are very confused and we're not sure what we're going to study in university. And then we're confused about what job we will do. And then obviously through a lot of experiences, we'll finally understand what is really meant for us, what job is really suitable for us. And yeah, it's kind of like a process of trial and errors, trying out new things. And it's kind of like the same here too. So even though Lelouch and Suzaku, they have different ideologies, different lifestyles, but in the end they still meet each other at the ending point because they all steer towards a sustainable peace. But however, the road towards that convergence is a very bumpy road, and it is and it's a lot. There's also a lot of bloodshed as well, regrets, and many other negative stuffs. There are also and but also there are also positive things as well. For example, their friends at the student council, and also the symbols of hope like Nunnally, and all of the people they care about who want to construct a world that everyone can live happily together. And that is just similar to like the existence of good and evil in one person, right? And in the end, because of the existence of Lelouch and Suzaku, we kind of see that there are so many sides in one person, and nobody is perfect. And because we have different values, we kind of make up for each other's flaws. It's kind of like that. And now I would like to move on to the similarities and the differences between Suzaku and Lelouch. So they both wanted to put an end to the cycle of hatred that led to war. They worried about their friends and family, but they had to hide it due to the tension of war. Suzaku thought Zero's methods of doing things were wrong, like how Suzaku killed his father to stop the war. So you see, there's a lot of plot twists, and Suzaku he kind of saw himself in Zero, and basically denying Zero is just like denying himself as well. That's why in the first season, Suzaku's ideology is very fragile, and he's still not sure what he really wants yet. He's trying to find a principle to work with, to obey, because he himself doesn't know what is the right path to choose. They both knew that they had to kill to achieve peace. Lelouch had to kill to strengthen his army and advance his plan, while Suzaku killed to defend Britannia and expand its territory. Um, on the other hand, Lelouch and Suzaku differed greatly in their mindsets and behaviors. For example, he would prioritize the results over everything else. even if he had to lie, use geese, or take advantage of other people's feelings to succeed. He also thought that in order to end the war, someone needed to win the fight, and he had to kill the enemies to advance in his plan. His principle was to use evil to fight against greater evil. He also hid his identity to work more smoothly with the Black Knights. However, because he hid too much from the Black Knights and even abandoned them during the battle, they lost trust in him. However, without Lelouch's capability and Guy's power, Japan might not be able to gain independence, since King Charles had the plan to merge the living world with the seas world. So obviously, because King Charles existed, and he also has Guy's power, Lelouch has to exist, and he also needs the Guy's power as well. And if in the case that King Charles and Guy's power exists, and there's no one like Lelouch, then that would be a huge problem because we don't know until when someone would be able to fight against King Charles. And in basically, it's kind of like already planned out in the first place, right? And without Lelouch capability of politics and also his ability to manage the geese power, then nobody can fight against King Charles, and then the world will be merged together in the end, right? There will be no future. And during this part, I would like to compare Lelouch with Sneasel a little bit. So for Sneasel, right? Sneasel and Lelouch, they are very similar, but for example, both of them, they also use people like chess piece, and they also manipulate people's feelings as well. But Lelouch, he doesn't really treat people like a chess piece only. He also treats them as a human, such as he doesn't just throw people's lives away or underestimate a person's lives. For example, during the Narita fight, when Lelouch saw that the Black Knights are heavily damaged, he ordered them to retreat to prevent casualties, right? And or when he or when he after Shirley's death and the event of the explosive ship, he let Karen have a choice. She can leave the Black Knights if she doesn't want to kill more people, right? So basically, Lelouch, he gives people choices. He kind of gave people choices, and he doesn't look down on people's lives. But for Sneasel, he doesn't exactly care a lot about people's lives that much. His principle is like it is okay to sacrifice a small number of people for the sake of the bigger population. For example, he abandoned Nunnally on the ship when Lelouch managed to break into that Democles, that it is a castle that floats in the sky. And the castle's name is Democles, I suppose, and it has an atomic bomb attached to it. That is where Sneasel stayed and fight against Lelouch army. And after Sneasel lost against Lelouch, he intended to leave Nunnally in the castle because he just said that he wouldn't care about a mere life of one person. Doesn't matter, right? So he's very cold and calculating, and he just treats people just like a chess piece, basically. But Lelouch, he's kind of different. He treats his enemies like a chess piece, but he also has some kind of like he also respects them as a human being. But he still use people as chess piece as well, especially if it's the enemy. And also another point is that Lelouch, he doesn't use Geass power on his allies. For example, the Black Knights and his friends. He only use it when he has no other choice but to use it. For example, in Shirley's case, right? Or when he used the Geass on Nunnally to give him the switch to the atomic bomb. Yeah, so basically, Lelouch is not completely evil. On the other side, Suzaku was someone who would prioritize others' benefits before his own, and also focus on using only honorable means to achieve things. He wanted to change Britannia from within by gaining the acceptance from society and working up in the system. So basically, there it's very clear to see there are two types of people here. Lelouch would be like he's the main person, and other people will work for his benefits. So many for the sake of one person, and Suzaku would be one for the sake of other people. So that is like the contrast that I can see between Suzaku and Lelouch. And Suzaku also obey his orders and the law very strictly. And however, he slowly changed to prioritizing results more after realizing the nature of war in Britannia. Suzaku was honest and kind towards others, so his colleagues and friends trusted him a lot. It's easy to assume that Suzaku had better characteristics than Lelouch. Like how he's kind and nice and things for other people, kind of like that. However, since each of them grew up differently, they ended up possessing distinct ideologies. For Lelouch, as the Prince of Britannia, he had good understanding of the royal family as well as politics. And with the death of his mother left unexplained, and his hatred towards the king and his ideology, Lelouch tended to see more of the negative part of the world. So he has kind of like a very cruel and very sad childhood, and he has to endure a lot of hardship. And although Lelouch's choice of life might seem cruel, he managed to see the big picture and make significant progress in defeating Britannia. Suzaku, he also has to suffer a lot as well. And because of his wish to die for redemption, his goodwill to change Britannia was fragile and couldn't come true without Lelouch's order to make him live on. So, so Suzaku, let's see. Suzaku, because he's a nice person, right? That's why he feels very guilty after he kills his father. And even after killing his father, he couldn't stop the war from happening, which kind of adds even more onto his burden of guilt. But Lelouch, even though for Lelouch, he chose negative methods such as destroying the Britannian system and killing the enemies. But at least Lelouch, he has a very clear goal, and he doesn't regret when he dirty his hands. He knows that he will use evil to fight the greater evil, and and he knows that in the end he will be held responsible for what he did, and he will be ready for that final judgment, right? But for Suzaku, he would blame himself for not only killing his father, but not being able to create a peaceful world. And eventually, both Suzaku and Lelouch, they develop throughout the series. For example, Lelouch, right? Lelouch learned to care for others, while Suzaku learned that he had been naive about life. And Lelouch's cruel fighting spirit combined with Suzaku's kindness would help change Britannia inside out and liberate Japan as well. So the sad thing about life is that even though we think that it's best that we can work with the other party, it usually doesn't go that way, right? Especially when our ideologies are kind of like very structured already. It's already solidified and could not be changed. It's very hard to sit down and talk to someone who has a complete opposite ideology to you. However, after experience so many deaths and so many painful experiences, and kind of like the situations kind of happen, and they kind of push Lelouch and Suzaku into working together, and and obviously when they work together they are invincible, right? And in the end, Lelouch and Suzaku were just two teenagers who wanted to fight for what they want to protect. While facing the dilemma of what justice really was, these two young men struggled through the battles to achieve the desirable peace while encountering many events that helped them reflect on their ideologies. At first, Suzaku's role in the story might be questionable, since he had such contradicting values. So we keep seeing Suzaku jumping back and forth, right? He's trying to obey the orders and follow the system, which we see that Britannian system is not even that perfect anyway, right? There are so many flaws in it, but why is Suzaku trying to protect such a system, right? However, that's the reason why it's so easy to see Lelouch as someone who is like a hero and who is trying to fight against the system that is very negative, right? However, without Suzaku's existence, it would be very hard for us to see the evil part of Lelouch because obviously uh, even though Britannian system might be a problem, the people, not every Britannian people are bad, right? There's still good people out there. So it's just like Lelouch said, we're not fighting the Britannian people, we're fighting the system, right? The system that is running and pushing the negative ideologies onto the citizens or the people who we will be fighting against. However, Lelouch's methods of carrying out the fight it's kind of like heading towards destruction, right? He's using strategies, even the Geass power, in order to win the fight against the Britannian army. Even, for example, he wins against Clovis, Cornelia, and many more Britannian guards, even using the Geass in order to obtain that peaceful world for his sister, right? But later on, Lelouch realized that he's not fighting just for his sister anymore, right? And for Suzaku, although his growth as a person is slower than Lelouch, but it kind of showed the struggle of an ordinary human without geese and intelligence of such caliber in the setting of war. So usually most of the people in the army, they already know how to obey the orders, right? Without being able to see the big picture. But Suzaku, he's kind of he has a relationship like as a friendship with Lelouch, and he also has the opportunity to engage in the fights between Lelouch and the Britannian army, and those opportunities help him experience more with the Britannian system and his interaction with other people like Euphemia, with Zero, and many more opened his eyes to a lot of different values, and it kind of all come together and change his ideologies as well. So both Lelouch and Suzaku, they during the process of interacting with people during the whole series, they they kind of reflect on their own ideologies, and they also slowly change as well. Especially Suzuki, he's the one who changed the most. And so we can see that there are so many themes throughout the anime. I might not be able to list all of them, but one of the main one is good and evil existing in one person, right? So Lelouch could be seen as evil, but he's also good in a way. And Suzaku is kind of like has more goodness in him, but he can also turn for the worse. And also the justice, what justice really is, and the focus on using the right methods or just achieving the results, right? What's more important? And I wonder what might be the last one. And I think probably the geese power, right? So Lelouch stated that geese power is like a wish. So when you wish for power, you get the geese that allows you to have absolute obedience from other people, right? It's kind of like a wish, but and from that on, it's like so the geese is like some sort of power that doesn't necessarily act as a weapon, but it depends on the user that it acts as a weapon or it acts as something better, something nice, for example. So those are those are most of the main themes that I saw throughout the entire series. And there's also the nature of war as well, and politics, and all of those. And you can read the quotes, and you can see there's so many messages sharing about war, friendship, human nature, and etc. that are very meaningful. And that's what's so awesome about the anime. And as humans, our values might clash with one another, but we still can become friends. And because our values differ, we can make up for each other's flaws. And just like King Charles said, like he wants to create a world without lies, right? But a world without lies, people who are different cannot work together because we're too different. If we don't lie, how can we get along, right? So some people they lie in order to blend in into a bigger group. So a word like that might not be that ideal. And so that's why our values might clash with another, but we can still become friends. And because the values differ, we make up for each other, right? There's a great diversity. And that would be the end of my sharing. I still have a feeling of still a feeling of rem like I don't want to end the entire thing yet because I feel like my sharing still kind of miss out a lot. But I have already tried my best through my analysis of Lelouch and Suzaku by using the method of tables, slides, and then paragraphs. And I'm so happy that I could share this with everybody. And I just want to say that thank you very much for watching my videos and listening to my sharing until now. And I hope that the we can have a lot of engagement. And in the future, maybe I can share a character analysis of another anime. And thank you very much again, and hope to see you sometimes in the future. Have a nice day.